Okay, here we have the chromatic scale. This is every note in music that we use. Okay, the chromatic scale is constructed in an interval called half steps. So from A to A sharp or B flat, that's a half step. From A sharp to B, that's a half step. From B to C, that's a half step, and so on. A half step on the guitar looks like this. So from A to B flat or A to A sharp, that's a half step. B flat to B or A sharp to B, that's a half step. So a half step is from one fret space to the next. Alright, so let's go back here to the chromatic scale. Okay, so as you can see, every note, or just about every note, has a corresponding sharp. So you got A sharp, C sharp, D sharp, and so on. The only notes that do not have a corresponding sharp is B and E. Okay? So just remember, from B to C and E to F is a half step. Alright? All the other notes are going to have a corresponding sharp, okay, and a half step movement, and then another half step until you get to the next note, right? All right, and two halves make a whole. Okay, and also you can see that just about every note has a corresponding flat. You got B and B flat, D and D flat, and so on. There are two notes that do not have a corresponding flat, and that is C and F. All right. So now let's take a look at this intervals chart down here, okay? So a half step is also a minor second, okay? And then a whole step is a major second. A whole plus a half, that's a minor third. That's what this is right here. Whole plus a half is a minor third. Two wholes is a major third interval. Okay, now this is a interval that we're going to be talking about quite a bit in this video, and that's the perfect fourth interval. One reason is because the guitar is actually tuned in perfect fourths for the most part. From the G to the B string is actually a major third. Look, if we're here on the G string, for instance, let's say this was the G string on the guitar, and when we go from the G to the B, that's two whole steps. From G to A is a whole step, and from A to B is a whole step. And so as you can see here, when you have two whole steps, that's a major third. But all the other strings are tuned in perfect fourths. As an example, like from E to A, that's two wholes plus a half. All right, look, from E to F sharp, that's a whole. And from F sharp to G sharp is a whole. That's my second whole. And then G sharp to A is a half. All right, from A to D is two wholes and a half, a perfect fourth. From D to G, again, a perfect fourth. All right, and remember, from B to from G to B is the major third interval. And lastly, from B to the high E string is going to be a perfect fourth. The reason why the guitar is tuned the way it is for bar chords, basically, because the guitar started out as a rhythm accompaniment instrument, just for rhythm guitar playing, and later people started playing guitar solos on it. So, alright, but what I would do is I'd recommend that you study this intervals chart and memorize it, okay, and look for a good ear training app that will play the intervals, and then you'd have to guess what they are, and it would tell you if you're right or wrong. And this way, you can train your ear to identify these intervals. Okay, that's going to help you out. All right, now let's look at the construction of the major scale. Okay, so the major scale is constructed using 2 holes, a half, 3 holes, and a half. Let me see if I can make this a little larger for you. There we go. So that means that whatever note we start on in the chromatic scale, if we use this formula, we will create the major scale based in that key. So for example, like if, let's say we were to start on the A note here, okay, and we use this formula. So we use A, and then we go a whole step to B, then we go another whole step to C sharp, now we go a half step to D, then we go a whole step to E, then a whole step to F sharp, then a whole step to G sharp, and a half step back to A. That is the A major scale. Alright, so down here I have the C major scale mapped out, and in between you can see the formula in between the notes. I put that there so you can see how that matches this right up here. Alright, and the reason why I'm showing you the C major scale is, one, the C major scale is special in that it's the only major scale that has no sharps and flats. And we're going to be using this major scale, this C major scale here, to help us with learning the notes on the guitar. Because what we're going to do is we're going to map out the C major scale on every string. Okay, and then once we identify where all those notes are, then we'll start to add in the flats or the sharps, which leads me to my next point. Again, that the A sharp and B flat, that's the same note. Okay, what I mean is it's the same pitch or tone with 2 different names. If you were to look at a piano keyboard, all the white keys, all right, are the natural notes. Okay, all the black keys are the sharps and flats. So this would be like one key on the piano keyboard, okay? This right here. And this would be like another black key right here, C sharp and D flat. So it's one pitch or tone that has 2 names. And it depends on the context whether you would call it, for instance, a C sharp or D flat. All right. So let's have a look at the chromatic scale again as it's laid out on the